Welcome to General Conference Conversations, where we have conversations about General Conference. I'm your host, Kaylin, and I'm super excited to be here with you studying the words of Christ's chosen leaders. I hope you enjoy. Oh, hello. Welcome back for another season. It's been a while since I recorded an episode of actual talks. It's been like over a month. No, about a month. Time's weird. I recorded the episode for a couple of days ago of information, announcements, and teasers and things like that, but actually digging into a talk has been a while, so I'm excited to be here since it is our first actual episode. And if you missed the information announcement episode a couple of days ago, I'll recap some of the announcements. So first of all, I'm here. You get to see my face. Welcome YouTube. Hello YouTube. I don't know how many people watch on YouTube, but I'm excited to be here anyway. So, and hello video podcast land. I don't know how many people actually watch video podcasts, since it's usually an audio platform, but if you are one of those, welcome. And if you're returning from last season, welcome back. I'm really excited to be here. And I had a lot of fun last season and I learned a lot and I have some exciting stuff for this season. I'm a bit more organized this time around, and I'm actually ahead, which is so exciting. Well, some of it I'm ahead, some of it I'm behind, but it's okay. We're good. The other big thing is that I created a study guide, a physical study guide, this time around to go along with these episodes. So, at the moment, it is just Saturday morning session, and it is just a digital download that you can then print out and write on. I'm hoping my goal is, maybe you guys can keep me accountable, is that by the end of November, I'll have finished the rest and gotten it all put together. And I'm hoping also to find somewhere that will print them and ship them. I would do it myself or get it printed here and ship them out. I live in Canada, and so literally anywhere outside of Canada, the shipping would be really high. So that's kind of a last resort kind of thing. If I have to do that, I will. But I'd rather do a kind of a print order kind of thing where the shipping will be at least less. I can't guarantee that it will be good shipping, but it won't be $25. So, but for now you can do the digital download, or you can wait for the big full copy eventually. For now, we're gonna start at the beginning. Sorry, I have a hair stuck to my chin. With President Oak's talk. The very first talk is Saturday morning session, helping the poor and distressed. As always, I encourage you to listen to and or watch the talk by yourself before you come and listen to me ramble about it. My goal is to encourage your own personal revelation and hopefully help you to think about things in a different way and in a way that you might not have thought of before. But also have your own answers and the things that the Lord would have you hear from these talks. So I always encourage that as well. Also a reminder, I am not an expert, I am not the prophet, so if these things don't resonate with you if the questions just don't feel like something you want to like engage with, if you think of other questions as you're studying, please go in the way the Spirit is directing you. I'm just doing my best, and these are questions that I felt prompted to ask myself as I was studying, or things that I thought of, personal experiences, things like that. So President Oaks' talk is all about service, first of all, and also specifically, I'll just read. This is from it's technically the second paragraph in his talk. It says, "My subject today concerns what the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and its members give and do for the poor and distressed. I will also speak of similar giving by other good people." So that's kind of his whole thing, is he starts by talking about our church specifically, which I'll get to in a second, and then he moves on to a couple of other organizations that either we've paired with, the church is paired with, or that he finds that he's like discovered in his travels and the people that he's met. So he starts talking about he references they put out a few months ago. It's called Caring for Those in Need 2021 Annual Report of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That we reported for the first time the extent of our humanitarian work worldwide. And they have a link to that if you would want to read that further. It's, I can't remember how many pages it is, kind of detailing the work that we do with organizations and like helping hands and tithing and like natural disaster relief and things like that. And then he says our 2021 expenditures for those in need in 188 countries worldwide totaled $906 million, almost $1 billion. In addition, our members volunteered over 6 million hours of labor in the same cause. Those figures are, of course, an incomplete report of our giving and helping. They do not include the personal services our members give individually as they minister to one another in called positions and voluntary member-to-member service. And our 2021 report makes no mention of what our members do individually through innumerable charitable organizations not formally connected with our church. I like that this is all kind of broken down into numbers. Like, we know this, right? We're very service oriented. We have ministering. We do service projects at almost every activity at church. Like, we pay tithing and missionary funds and fast offerings and like all of that, right? We serve at temples, volunteer temples. We have our callings, which are all volunteer, not paid, right? Like, we have a lot that we do, but to see it broken down, even just like the 6 million hours, which is, I'm not sure where they got that, but like reported 6 million hours, right? Probably things like helping hands and like missionaries and things like that. And then to think that past that, there's also service that we do that we don't report to our bishop. Like, I don't go to my bishop every time I do service and be like, I did 4 hours of service today. Like, to think that there are way more hours than that volunteered by our church is pretty amazing to see, all broken down into numbers and like actual figures. And then he goes on to talk about, because he's talking, obviously he mentions all of the individually, all the things that members do individually through charitable organizations that are not connected with the church. And so he references Doctrine and Covenants 58, which says, well, these quotes come from verses 26 to 28. It says, "Behold, it is not meet that I should command in all things, For he that is compelled in all things, the same is slothful and not a wise servant. Verily I say unto you, men should be anxiously engaged in a good cause, and do many things of their own free will, and bring to pass much righteousness. For the power is in them wherein they are agents unto themselves, and inasmuch as men do good, they shall in no wise lose their reward. And I really like this kind of collection of verses. First of all, because of the I should not command. It's not me that I should command in all things. I'm a very big believer in having constant open communication with God and having that relationship always there. But there are some things that he'll just say, I just figured it out, right? Like, we don't need to ask him how I should dress today, right? Like, what should I wear today? Or, like, there are just some things that the Lord's like, no, you can figure that out. You're smart. I believe in you. And taking our own initiative and our own intuition and our own agency. And then to be anxiously engaged in a good cause. I just love that phrase. I know we use that phrase, I feel like, quite a bit in the church. It's kind of a heavily quoted phrase. But I think it's just so evocative. Like, it's just very anxiously engaged in a good cause. Like, you get, oh yeah, okay, I understand what that means. Like, it's pretty straightforward. Also, for me personally, I have anxiety, and so using the word anxiously engaged in a good cause, like to use the word anxious and good in the same sentence, means something to me. It shows me that my anxiety, well, parts of my anxiety are good sometimes. Obviously, we're all anxious about some things. We're all stressed about things. And there's good stress and there's bad stress. The good stress actually encourages us to do things. You have a deadline. You're stressed to do things by the deadline because you want to get it done by the deadline. Bad stress is when you physically, literally cannot function. That's where my anxiety is. But to use anxious in a good connotation is big for me personally. And then, of course, the end, and this is what I really love. Inasmuch as men do good, they shall in no wise lose their reward. And I think that's so hopeful. And I think that just all of that is just so hopeful. And like, I'm making connections as I'm sitting here. Like, that we don't need to be commanded in all things. That we don't need to an excuse to do good things. Excuse isn't the right word. I don't know how I'm just not gonna try, but like, it's cool. Anyway, but then the end, that line, as men do good, they shall in no wise lose your reward. And I think that's such a promise for everything in our lives, right? Service, but also parenting and missions and life in general, right? That there's always something we feel like we could be doing more. And we always feel like we're failing and that, we're not doing good enough. But as we do good, we will not lose our reward. As we are trying our best, as we are trying our best to live up to God's expectations of us, He's gonna bless us. And I think that's such a hopeful message, that God's like, no, I see the effort. I see that you're trying. And that works. Like, get better. And that works. So that's my first question for you to think about is, how are you anxiously engaged in good causes? Whether that's in service projects or in your families or in personal development, whatever that may be, I think it's easy to read something like that and be like, well, I'm not engaged in any good causes, or I'm not engaged in enough good causes, right? I will point out that it says a good cause, because the good cause is the gospel, is spreading the love of Christ, but that's a whole other discussion. But it's easy to think that we could always be doing more. And it's easy to be like, oh, that 5 seconds I spent on Instagram, I could have been texting somebody, or that afternoon that I napped, I could have been going to the temple. But I think it's also, it's really helpful to look at what you're already doing. When I was a missionary, I hated goal setting. I still hate goal setting. Because if I don't hit a goal, I feel like an absolute failure. My anxiety likes to tell me that I'm an absolute failure. So, we were expected to set a lot of goals as missionaries. And there's like a whole chapter, a whole section in Preach My Gospel about how to set goals. And, personally, as companionship, as districts, as zones, monthly, weekly, transferly, daily, like all the time. And a lot of those were number goals. We have what we call key indicators. So they are like people that you find to teach, people who come to sacrament meeting, people who get baptized, things like that. And usually each mission has overall goals for those categories. And then you are expected to make goals in those categories as companionship every week, every transfer, every month, things like that. And I hated doing that, like with a burning passion. I hated it because they weren't things that I could control. I can control if 3 people are ready and willing to hear the gospel this week and wanting us to come back. I can't physically make 2 people come to sacrament meeting on Monday. I cannot physically force someone to be baptized this month. That is on their agency. I can control how many doors I knock on or how many people I talk to. I can control how many people I invite to sacrament meeting. I can control how many people I invite to be baptized. So anyway, it was a big deal. It was a big thing that was really hard for me. They've since, at least in my mission, done away with what we call the standards of excellence, which were the mission-wide goals for those categories. And they're now focusing on having meaningful, spirit-filled interactions with people that they come across, which I love and I'm jealous of, but it's fine. Anyway, so I had to teach a training in district council on goals, and I was so nervous because I don't like goals. And a couple of weeks before I had to do this, we went on a hike. I think my whole zone went, but I can't remember. And it's like the hardest hike in the mission. I don't even know if they let missionaries do it anymore. It's called Flatiron. If you are in the Mesa, Phoenix area of Arizona, you probably know Flatiron. And it is, I want to say it's 5 miles round trip, but at least half of that is like straight up and down. Not straight up and down, but it's like a good, you're like bouldering for half of it. It took us an entire P-day. We left at like 7 a.m. and did not get back till about 3. And it was really, really hard. But it was also very, very worth it because you got to the top and you can see all the way to Phoenix and it's beautiful. But I learned a lot on that hike. I had a lot of really cool connections on the hike. And one of the main things was, you know, you're hiking and you can see kind of where you're supposed to end up at the top. And it just keeps staying there. Like, it keeps just looking the same amount of distance away. Like, you're like, oh, I'm not getting any closer. This is terrible. I'm never gonna get there, yada, yada, yada. But if you take a second and you stop, breathe, drink water, eat a snack, and you look behind you, you see how far you've come. And you're like, wow, I was all the way down there an hour ago. Like, I'm halfway up a freaking mountain. Like, I'm awesome. This is so cool. And so I think a lot of times with goals, this is what I shared in my training, with goals, with, you know, things that we're working on, even if it's not specifically a goal, but, you know, we're like, hey, I really need to have more charity, or I need to be better at paying my tithing, or things like this. We're like, I want to be anxiously engaged in a good cause. Sometimes we see this like end point. It's not always an end point, right? It's a continual march into eternity of progression. But we see this like, oh, if only I could do this. And that one point looks like it never gets any closer. But when you turn around and you look back and you're like, oh, but this week I texted my ministering people and asked how they were doing, and they said that it was really nice that I texted. Or this week I went to the temple twice instead of once, or I went to the temple at all. Like, I made the 5-hour drive and I went to the temple. Or I made extra goodies to put into my kids' lunches to make them smile. Or I went out of my way to tell my husband that I love him, or to take him out on a nice date. Like, I smiled at that lady at the grocery store who smiled back, and I hope I made her day. And when we look at what we're already doing well, I think we can see that we are anxiously engaged in a good cause, and we can see how we want to improve. Be like, oh, well, but that one day I really could have gone to temple, or I really could have done an hour of family history. Next week I want to do an hour of family history. And I truly believe that is how Christ would speak to us. That if he walked into this room right now, that he wouldn't say, oh, your room's really messy, you need to clean it up, you need to have a better home, a more spirit-filled, a tidier home, whatever. He would sit down and he would ask me what I've done today, and he would tell me that he loves me, and then we would together come up with ways that I could do better. And we'll talk about that next episode too, because Elder Victor talks about that, about Christ, like being there and what he would say to you, and it's so sweet. I love Elder Victor. But for now, I'm gonna move on because I spent too much time on that story. Anyway, but that's my question: is how are you anxiously engaged in a good cause? Hopefully that was weird. Sorry. How are you anxiously engaged in a good cause? And then he talks about in his time as an apostle and his time working, all of the efforts and the service that he saw given by good people trying to be good, by humanitarian services and all that stuff. And he says this, which I really love. Despite all that our church does directly, most humanitarian service to the children of God worldwide is carried out by persons and organizations having no formal connection with our church. As one of our apostles observed, the apostles Orson F. Whitney, by the way, God is using more than one people for the accomplishment of this great and marvelous work. It is too vast, too arduous for any one people. As members of the restored church, we need to be more aware and more appreciative of the service of others. The Church of Jesus Christ is committed to serving those in need, and is also committed to cooperating with others in that effort. And I really, really love that. Like, I know I'm going to say that every time, but especially the quote by Orson F. Whitney. Let me make sure that that's the right person I'm thinking of. Yeah, Orson F. Whitney. A conference report in April of 1928. So, but I love that, like, God is using more than one people. There are 16 million of us worldwide. And there's a lot of people. But 16 million opposed to 7 billion is a vast difference. So we need help, right? We can't do it all on our own. And as he said, there are so many humanitarian services and organizations that are doing amazing, amazing work that have no connection with the church, that we don't cooperate, like, we not cooperate, of course we cooperate with them, but like, we don't pair with them on anything, we're not officially working with them or anything like that. They're just doing good. And so he talks about a couple that we collaborate with specifically. And then I love this little quote. He says, "Modern revelation teaches that our Savior Jesus Christ is the true light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world. By this, all the children of God are enlightened to serve him and one another to the best of their knowledge and ability." And I love that as well, that like, that everyone, regardless of religion or anything, like, we all have the light of Christ, and that we can be inspired to do good, whether we're religious or not, whether we're a member of the church or not. And then he gives a couple of examples. There is an article from the church newsroom about one of them in the United Arab Emirates about feeding. It's a hunger relief organization in the Middle East, which is actually really cool. I highly encourage you to read that article. I read through it, and it was just cool to read, like, the things that organization is doing, and also how we helped and things like that. And then he talks about an organization called Med Global, and he again says many unselfish children of God are involved in teaching efforts, also worldwide. And he says specifically teaching efforts, but also service and things like that. And then he gives this little caveat. He says, of course, these three examples do not mean that everything said or done by organizations or individuals purporting to be good or of God is truly that. Oops, sorry. Lost my thought. These examples do show that God inspires many organizations and individuals to do much good. It also shows that more of us should be recognizing the good done by others and supporting it as we have the time and means to do so. And so, of course, we should do our research and be cautious with organizations that we work with. As you said, not everybody is doing it for good reasons, but I think we should lead with love and understanding, not accusations, to give people the benefit of the doubt that they are trying to do good. And again, he encourages us to support the efforts that are going on by other people, which is my next question is, I lost my spot, sorry. How can you notice, appreciate, and support those providing a service to all regardless of religion or no religion? So how can you support and appreciate and acknowledge, even if you don't have, extra time or money to specifically support something? Maybe you can give them a shout out on social media, or tell your friends about them. Spread the word. Like, there are free and very easy things that you can do to support organizations like that. So how can you do that? How can you notice those in your communities, that your friends are doing, that you see on social media, on the news, things like that? And then the very last quote, that I wanted to, the very last quote, the last quote I'm going to read. He quotes Joseph Smith. He says, "As our first president, Joseph Smith, taught, we claim the privilege of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of our own conscience, and allowing all men the same privilege. Let them worship how, where, or what they may." And he's quoting this in reference to he talks about some of the things that the church supports, and he talks about religious freedom. They've done so much for religious freedom, right? Like, we talk about that almost every conference, how important religious freedom is, and not just for us, but for people who are not of our faith, or of any particular faith. And so I love that reminder, and that is the 11th article of faith. And I just love that reminder of, like, we believe that everybody should be able to worship God how they want, where they want, how they want, or if they don't want to at all. And that serves everybody, right? To be able to, for us to practice our own religion, and for others to do the same. Kind of the last thing he talks about Alma 1, and he quotes verse 30. "And thus in their prosperous circumstances they did not send away any who were naked, or that were hungry, or that were athirst, or that were sick. And they were liberal to all, both old and young, both bond and free, both male and female, whether out of the church or in the church." This is all the humanitarian efforts of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints seek to follow examples of a righteous people described in the Book of Mormon. That as we prosper, whether that's monetarily or in time or skills, that we will not turn away anybody, that we will serve anyone who comes across our paths. So yeah, I will recap my questions. The first is, how are you anxiously engaged in a good cause? And then how can you support, acknowledge, appreciate the service done by organizations, whether associated with the church or with any church or no church, that are doing good in the world. This conference talked a lot about service. There's quite a few talks about service, and about the 2 great commandments, loving God and loving your neighbor. I love service. I love doing service projects as a missionary. They were some of my favorite memories, and they were a really easy and powerful way to show people the love of Christ, and to show people that that's what we were spreading, that that's what we were doing, is we're here to serve. We're here to serve, and we're here to talk about Jesus. And if you don't want to hear about Jesus, we're just here to serve. And those are some of my favorite moments, especially during COVID. Sometimes that was all we could do was service projects, and it was great. I loved it. So, and then I mentioned a few things. So, D&C 58, if there's further study, if you want to continue or dive deeper into kind of some of the things he talked about, D&C 58 is the anxiously engaged in a good cause section. There's the article about the Middle East that we helped with the Feeding the Hungry, which is really, really good. I highly encourage you to watch it, to see it. I'll put the link in the description. Articles of Faith 1:11 is where we believe that we have to worship the Almighty God as we see fit. And then Alma 1, which is all about, which is what he quotes at the end, which is also a really great chapter. That's kind of all I have for you today. But beyond that, also, of course, again, if there are questions or subjects that have caught your interest as you've studied, what is the Lord telling you? What is he prompting you to study? What is he prompting you to look into further? And if you feel comfortable sharing, I would love to hear the questions that you come up with, or the things that really stood out to you. You can comment them on this video, on Instagram, Facebook, or you can email me, which I'll put all of those in the show notes so you can find me. But yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you so much for listening to and or watching this episode of General Conference Conversations. Be sure to like and follow and share us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you like the show, please subscribe or leave a review and tell your friends and family. Also, a quick reminder that there is a physical study guide to go along with these videos. You can find that link in the description. Until next time.